Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Grace. I'm a new mom and I make content all around pregnancy, postpartum, and just life as a mom. And so if that is of interest to you, whether you're about to have a baby or you just did, then I think you'll really like all the content that I'm putting out, and I'd love to have you subscribe. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what I did to prepare for my natural labor. I did a video on my birth story that you guys can check out right here, but overall had a pretty smooth experience. And despite a couple hiccups here and there, it was everything I would have hoped for. And so I thought it would be super helpful to share everything I did leading up to my labor and delivery. And hopefully that can be helpful for anybody else who is in the midst of prepping for their big day. Having mantras that you've memorized has really helped me. I think there's a lot of anxiety, especially in the weeks leading up to your actual labor and delivery, because, there's a good amount of time where it could be any day. You can look up your own mantras or scripture if that's more your style. But for me, the one that really eased a lot of my anxieties and made me feel super confident going in was, your body was built to birth and your baby was made to be born. There's the question of, can I do this? Can I do it naturally? At least for me, my mind went to like what could go wrong. And I feel like this not only gives you the confidence that you were made to do this and you can, but also that there's probably not going to be an issue. You have both been made for this event to happen and to happen successfully. So don't let yourself get wrapped up in the what ifs and how things could go wrong, but rather just really appreciate that we are designed to do this. And why would your labor and delivery be any different? And again, if you want to go on Pinterest or online and find other mantras or scriptures that resonate more with you, you totally can. But for me, that single mantra really kind of set the tone for my entire labor and delivery experience. And so if you're going to remember one thing, that is one that I'd recommend. The second, which really surprised me, and I was not excited to do it, but it was to watch actual birth videos. And I'm not talking about like birth vlogs here on YouTube, but actual like graphic deliveries. And this was on our like doula resource packet, and it came with some accounts that actually post these videos. Obviously, they have consent from the birthing mother, but they are very graphic. And honestly, it was extremely jarring and uncomfortable for me to watch the first few times. I was pretty shocked because I've never seen anything like that. And I couldn't wrap my head around how that was happening and how I would do that. But after watching more and more of them, I got used to the idea of my body working in that way. It honestly helped me like visualize myself doing it, which sounds so funny, but it is true. Like if you have not seen that before, I would recommend maybe just looking at it. And I was like back and forth. I'm like, I don't want to freak myself out before it happens, but in all reality, I would suggest exposing yourself to it so that you can kind of get over how crazy it is before you're actually in the midst of it. I will link the accounts below so that if you guys feel compelled to look at these videos, then you totally can. Another thing that I did was diaphragmatic breathing. I'll link a video below on exactly how to do it, but it's essentially just a deep, controlled type of breathing that makes you a lot more aware of all of those muscles that you'll be using during childbirth. And having that sense of awareness helps you better control and relax them once the time comes that you are in labor. I remained pretty active throughout my pregnancy, and around 20 weeks, I switched over from my traditional programming to a prenatal programming. And so that's when I joined the Ladder app, and I really like it. There's a lot of apps out there that allow you to do workouts and you just play the video and it's whatever, but I really like Ladder because every week you have a coach who's like actively giving you new training schedules. And so each day you have an assigned workout, and it just takes the thinking out of the workout and it's not repetitive. You actually have like a journal feature and you can put in the weights that you're using and like see yourself progressing. So I use Ladder even now postpartum, but I made the switch because the prenatal factor was different than what I was using before. And since then I haven't really returned back to it, just because I do like the features that I mentioned. And what I like about Ladder's prenatal program is that the coaches that are coaching it are actually pregnant themselves. At least they were when they did the coaching. And so they know what you're going through and they have intentional modifications to make it easier or harder depending at where you're at. So if you're in the first trimester, things are relatively good and your belly's not in the way, you can do maybe a harder variation. Whereas if you're further along, your belly is definitely in the way, and maybe you don't have the same energy that you used to have, you can take extra breaks. And it's just all around a really great program. So if you're in a place in your pregnancy where you feel like you have the time and energy to incorporate a workout here and there, then I'll link them below. You should have like a referral code for me, which will give you like a free month or something like that. But any type of movement is going to be helpful. Walking is huge. Anything that'll help you keep a baseline for strength and endurance, because, labor is quite the marathon, and you're going to want to have the strength to be squatting and just keeping up with everything that's going on, because we don't really know how long it will be. That said, you always get a break from the contractions, so you can do it. But if you want it to be as easy as possible, obviously having some sort of like baseline fitness is going to make it a bit easier. One other sort of mindset shift that I made when I was exercising during my pregnancy was that I would think about the duration and the exercise I was doing as like practicing for withstanding a contraction. If I was doing like an isometric hold or a wall sit for 45 seconds, I would imagine that it was a contraction, and just like reminding myself in real time, feeling that pain, that there's going to be a break. And that's really the mentality that you need to have in a natural labor, is full confidence that you can get through it, and then knowing that you'll be rewarded with that break at the end. You obviously can't simulate labor before you get to it, but I think using exercise as a tool to intentionally put yourself in painful situations within reason, obviously don't hurt yourself. But I personally found that using exercises that got more difficult with time was a good way for me to get a sense of a pain that was productive and pushing my limits in terms of what I could handle, so that when the time came that I did have contractions, it was like, I've been here, at least in the capacity that I could have been. Another thing I did was take my supplements. I took a prenatal, obviously. I took choline as well. And then I started doing some calm magnesium every night. I think magnesium especially was helpful in making sure that I was getting sleep. Further along you get in your pregnancy, at least in my experience, the nights were rough. Like, I was so tired all the time. And then when I went to sleep, I still couldn't. So magnesium was huge. You can probably use any other magnesium powder, but I used Calm. And then they also make like little Calm travel packets, so I didn't have to bring this like big tub of powder with me when I would go other places. And so I found it super convenient. I had one every night. It was like part of my ritual. And having any type of sleep support, I think, was huge in making sure that I had some amount of energy going into that. Another thing that I did was dates and raspberry leaf tea. Studies show that eating dates can soften the cervix, leading to a higher dilation during labor, which I can personally attest to. I ate about 6 dates a day from 28 weeks on, and I went into the hospital and was checked at a 7. I can't obviously guarantee that the dates are what did it, but a 7 is pretty far along, so definitely eat some dates. Similarly, raspberry leaf tea is supposed to tone, strengthen the uterus, and so that helps make the contractions more strong and effective, which I don't know if this one was as helpful for me, because if you watch my birth story, I'll link it, you definitely should, but I explained that my contractions were consistently inconsistent, both in terms of timing and strength. So maybe I didn't drink enough tea. I drank like 3 cups a day, again, at 28 weeks on. I would actually every morning boil 3 cups of water, add 3 tea bags, and then put that in the fridge. And then I would drink it either plain, just on ice, or with like some lemonade or something like that. Toward the end of pregnancy, it was so hard for me to drink water. And so having this tea quota, if you will, just motivated me to drink more. And that was beneficial within itself. So if that's something that you think would be helpful for you, definitely try it. Personally, I would have rather been overprepared than underprepared. And so I did both the dates and the raspberry leaf tea, and I probably will again in my next pregnancy. I also read some books. I actually went to Barnes and Noble and bought like 5 or 6 books when I found out I was pregnant, which was complete overkill. Don't do that. A lot of those books have the same information. They're just packaged in a different way. And so if you're going to buy any books, What to Expect When You're Expecting, probably the most widely known, and it really is like the gold standard. It has everything you would need to know for a normal pregnancy, and then they have so many different sections for outliers. So if you're having twins, or if you are giving birth in a car, they have so many different pieces of information that I do think it's worth the investment. The other book that I read was Ina May's Guide to Natural Childbirth, and it also has some pretty graphic pictures, which shocked me as well. But basically the book is, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, I did not finish the book. I think the first half of it are like first person stories of people that gave birth at their birthing center. It's not even like a birthing center, it's like an off-site series of cabins in like rural Tennessee or something. So don't let that sway you from reading it. Like, it really is interesting to hear so many women's stories on how they felt labor come on and how they experienced it. And it's just interesting. And they're all positive, at least from the ones that I read. And then the second half of the book, I think, actually has some more tactical practices, but I did not get that far. I do think that's just a nice thing to have. I would read a couple stories before bed, drinking my magnesium, and it was just nice. I feel like a lot of people don't talk in detail about their labor and delivery experience. So being able to almost like hear 3 or 4 stories every night before bed, I just accumulated all of these good vibes around giving birth. Even if you're not like super hippie granola trying to have this natural childbirth in the woods somewhere, I do think that there's some value in hearing those first person stories and just having labor and delivery really written in a way that's positive and encouraging is great, because I think online things tend to be mostly negative. This book is just like really solid and encouraging. And so I think it's worth getting if you feel like that's something you need. I also got a doula. I definitely think they're worth it if you have the means to have one. I was very on the fence about getting a doula because my husband and I are more private, sort of chill people. And so I wasn't sure that it was something we would need, especially as I got further along and I was doing so much research of my own. I just wasn't sure it was necessary. I don't want to say I thought I knew everything, but I felt like all the information that I was hearing was very similar. And so I was like, I don't know what extra value this is going to add. But I will say, although I didn't really use my doula until a few hours into being at the hospital, she was there when I needed her. And I think that's sort of the power of the doula, is that they know when you need them and they step in. And then when you don't, they sort of let you do your own thing. And so it really is this empowering presence that meets you where you're at. And when you need them most, when you're in your weakest and most vulnerable, they speak sense to you and encourage you. And it sounds so woo-woo, I know, and especially if you're looking at like a big cost, it can be hard to justify, but especially if it's your first, and if you have a partner that also has not experienced childbirth, it's nice to have them have like a sounding board if they're having anxieties, watching you go through this, because at least what my husband has told me is that it was very hard for him to see me in pain. And so having just somebody else who's seen so many labors and deliveries happen and being calm and not concerned, I think was really helpful for everybody. And the last thing that I did was just constantly consume content as it related to labor and delivery prep. So I'm going to link some channels that specifically help me, but I also would just like pop on a podcast during my shower or whatever it was. Like I was constantly seeking information to help me make the best decisions and preparations for my labor and delivery. And I think while it might have been overkill at the time, and I can't say I'm going to do this for my next baby because I just don't think I will have the time, but I almost gave myself so much information and knowledge that no matter what happened on the day, I had a good idea of like what it was going to look like. If you're going to study one thing specifically, I think knowing the labor stages and what your body's doing, what baby's doing, all of those things, and what you might be feeling is going to be super helpful. All right, those are all of the things that I did to prepare for natural childbirth. I hope you guys found this helpful, and if you did, please subscribe. I plan to make many more videos just like this. And if you haven't already watched my birth video, you can find that here. And if you are currently pregnant right now, you should comment your due date down below and we can all connect with each other having babies at a similar time. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again in a video very soon.